Welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new here, my name is Toya and I am a mental health therapist, and I am licensed in 3 states, Missouri, Illinois, and California. And today I bring you back to my channel to talk to you about effective communication, what that is, and how to achieve that in your own marriage or relationships. So let's just start by talking about what is effective communication. Well, that's just simply having the ability to convey your thoughts, your opinions, your desires, your feelings in an effective way where the person that you're speaking with can receive it and understand it. It's very clear, complete clarity in what the message is you're trying to convey. That is effective communication. And in order to have effective communication, certain things must exist. For one, active listening. And then you have to be very aware of not only what you say, which is the verbal communication part of that, but also your nonverbals as well as your paraverbal, which is how you say it. So let me break all of those down. Active listening, verbal, nonverbal, and paraverbal communication, because all of that has to exist, and it has to exist in a certain way in order to have effective communication. So active listening. That's just simply being in a place to where you can listen without judgment, be able to receive clarity and understanding, reflect, pay close attention, and pretty much summarize what it is that's being said to you. To have effective communication, you and the person you're speaking with are basically playing 2 roles. One person is the talker while the other person listens, and then that switch, because that other person that was listening will then get a chance to talk while then you listen. If 2 people are trying to talk to each other at the same time, it's going to be so much information that can be missed, and that can, if you're missing information, missing messages, missing certain words that's being conveyed to you at that time, that definitely can hinder the overall understanding of what the message truly is meant to be. So active listening is just paying attention, being aware of what's being said, being able to summarize it and understand it before you just jump into what your next response is. Now let's talk about verbal communication. That's the simplest one to start with, and that's just simply the words you choose to use. But the words you choose to use are super important, because if you're talking to someone and you're using, let's say, profanity or other aggressive words, or if you're using terms that might not mean the same thing or can be conveyed in different ways, that can make it really confusing on how that person is going to receive your message. So you want to be careful with the words you use and make sure they're direct, honest, but respectful words to where the person won't feel like they got to put up a defense and not be able to hear what you're trying to say. So nonverbal communication, that is how you look as you're speaking. Sometimes we can be in a conversation with someone and the things they don't say is louder than the words that actually come out their mouth. If I'm talking to you, if I'm bringing you this video, or even if we're having a face-to-face conversation and my hands are on my cheek and I'm rolling my eyes, but I'm telling you with my words, I'm listening. That means that's so important that you tell me that. I'm so glad you came to me today to tell me that. Like, my nonverbal will tell you something completely different. You will walk away with a whole nother different understanding. So being able to be aware of your nonverbals. Open posture is important when it comes to having nonverbal communication. Open posture lets the person know that you're open to listening to what they have to say. You're interested. Maybe even lean in a little bit more to show that you're actually trying to understand them and listen to them attentively. Physical space is important, especially if you're having a conversation that might be a little hard to have. Maybe it's a conversation about feeling disrespected or having your feelings hurt, and each person is different. Some might want you to lean in close. Your spouse might want you to hold their hand as they talk. Or some people might want some space. Like, okay, I can talk to you, but let's not, give me arm length space. Be a little back right now because I'm feeling emotional and I want to be able to express myself and talk with my hands without having you right up on me. But that's all nonverbal, and speaking with talking with your hands, even if you're talking and you're doing all of this where you're banging your fist in your hand, even if you're not feeling aggressive, that can come across as aggressive. So you got to be really careful with how you look, the nonverbals you give off as you're talking. But now let's talk a little bit about how you say certain words. That's paraverbal. Paraverbal talk about the way we emphasize certain words, the tone that we use, the volume that we use as we speak. There's one sentence I used to teach in group counseling to emphasize this particular fact about how important paraverbal communication is. And that sentence that I used was, I didn't say you were stupid. Now, don't ask me where that came from. This was like some junior high students that I was teaching this to. I might have even had them come up with it, who knows. But the sentence was, I didn't say you were stupid. But I'll say it in different ways to where, depending on how I said it, they will take a completely different meaning from what it is I was trying to convey. If I say, I didn't say you were stupid, then they'll usually walk away thinking, okay, well, you didn't say it, but somebody said it, so where they at? Because we got a problem. Versus if I say, I didn't say you were stupid. Notice that nonverbal tool kind of looking away like, I didn't say you were stupid. So then they're like, okay, well, you said something. You might not have said stupid, but it was something that I didn't like or probably wouldn't like. So what did you say? Or I might say, I didn't say you were stupid. Well, now that means I implied it. That's how they took that. So same exact sentence, same exact words, but based off of how I emphasize certain words, how I looked when I said it, based off of the emphasis and the tone in which I said it, they can take it completely different. So when you're talking to your spouse or your partner, make sure that, you are very aware of how you're speaking. To kind of throw myself under the bus here, this is something that I find a little funny now, but I didn't realize I was doing it, is when I'll talk to my kids about something. And you could probably tell when I'm talking to you, I get a little loud and I get passionate because I'm really into what I'm talking about. And depending on the topic, it might be something I'm totally comfortable talking about, but my kids might be a little uncomfortable talking. So when I get to, talking like this, talking with my hands, talking a little louder, they'll like say, well, are you upset? Like, why are you getting mad? I'm not getting mad. I'm talking to you. And they had to bring to my attention, like, well, you started talking to me like this, but now you're talking to me like this. So what's up? So I had to become more self-aware, like, okay, stay calm, not even that I'm getting angry, but watch my nonverbals, watch my paraverbals, so I can continue to let them know that this is a conversation I want to have. I'm not in my feelings, as they like to say. I'm just passionate about what it is I'm talking about. But that's an example. Again, you have to be careful with how you say what you say. So in marriage, we know one of the most important ingredients to have a successful marriage is to have effective communication. Being able to understand your partner and feeling like your partner can also understand you. You guys might not always agree. There may be moments to where you don't have the same opinion or agree or want things done the exact same way. Maybe even a different goal or means to how to achieve that goal. That could produce conflict, in which, in order to avoid that conflict or avoid tension within your marriage, you have to be able to talk about it. You can't shy away from those topics that might not always feel good to talk about. So I gave you some tips on what effective communication looks like, what you got to watch out for, be an active listener, watch your verbal, nonverbal, and paraverbal. But now I'm going to give you 7 specific tips on how to make sure you have effective communication within your marriage. Tip number 1, pick the best time to talk. You might be up and alert and ready to hit a conversation at 6 o'clock in the morning, but maybe you've been up since 4. You done had your first cup of coffee and now you ready to get at it. And maybe your spouse is just rolling out of bed and they need to kind of wake up, wash their face, let them brush their teeth. As you can tell, I'm big on dental hygiene. There's been several videos where I tell people, make sure you brush your teeth. But if you're having a conversation with someone, you probably want to make sure you have nice breath and hope that they do as well. Give your spouse time to wake up, be able to receive what it is you have to say. Be alert so they can be an active listener and be attentive for you. So maybe the morning time ain't the best. Maybe for you, though, it is, because maybe you guys both got up at 4 o'clock, or one just got up and the other one just got back from working out or whatever, and you guys are both alert, ready to talk. But just pick the time that's best for you. I'm not saying morning time isn't best, but you assess for yourself. Is that the best time? Another time to sit back and think, is it the best time to talk to my spouse? It's like when they just get off of work. If you've had a stressful day, or if they had a stressful day, it's not that you guys can't still have meaningful conversations, but if they're just getting home from work, or if they work from home, if they're just shutting down their computer after a long day of work, you might not want to go right into a serious conversation. Give them time to kind of kick up their feet. Put on what I like to call their house clothes. Get out of the clothes they have to wear to be all professional and ready, and put on something a little bit more comfortable. Maybe even it's time to eat dinner. So maybe eat something first before you dive into a serious conversation, or have the conversation while you're eating. But maybe right when getting off of work, ain't the best time. So give some time to pass so you guys can prepare to have that conversation with each other. Again, find out what works for you. If this works for you, I'm not saying don't do it, but these are just times I'll be mindful of, because even if it works for you, it might not work for your spouse. And you want the time to be a good time for both of you. Tip number 2, do an emotional check-in with your spouse. Before you dive into a serious conversation, there is nothing wrong with stopping and saying, hey babe, how you doing? How you feeling right now? You know, if they say, I'm so stressed and overwhelmed and I'm just ready for the day to be over, might not be the best time to have that conversation with them, you know. Or maybe you can say, hey, I get that you stressed. It's been a long day. Why don't you go on and, take a bath, get something to eat, and maybe in about an hour or so, there is something I want to talk to you about. But you probably don't want to dive right in when they're already emotionally distressed about something. So do an emotional check-in. Do an emotional check-in for yourself. If you're angry, bothered, irritated, frustrated, it's 7 p.m. and you want to have this conversation and you yourself haven't ate all day, maybe you was up all night and you already sleep deprived, it might not be a good time for you to engage in a conversation. So check in with your spouse, check in with yourself, and let's make sure you guys are both in the best emotionally regulated state you can be in before you dive into any conversations that might be deemed as serious ones that you're hoping to get clarity, maybe even a solution about. That leads me to tip number 3. Determine your goal, your purpose, and if you're talking about a problem, maybe even some possible solutions to the problem before you even initiate a conversation with your spouse. If you don't know how to make a problem better, how to resolve it, then it's kind of unfair to go into a conversation expecting your spouse to automatically know the answer to that question. We're going to talk about support maybe in another video, because support looks differently: emotional, tangible, financial, self-esteem. It's all kind of different ways we can receive and give support. So before you engage in that conversation, know exactly not only your goal, but what type of support you're hoping to get. So that way you can convey it to that person. Let's take mind reading off the table, because nobody is a mind reader. And the clearer you can communicate what it is you need from your spouse, the better they can show up and deliver that to you. Tip number 4, something that can help you convey the solution to a problem if you're indeed talking about a problem or something that you didn't like, would be to use I statements. Now I'm going to put I statements up on the screen for you to see. But it goes like this. I'm going to tell you when a blank should be inserted, but then I'm going to tell you what should be inside of that blank. So I feel blank when blank, because blank, and I would like blank. So the first blank, I feel. That blank should be filled in with an emotion, something that is going to describe how you feel. This way you're starting the conversation off taking accountability with how you actually feel. Instead of starting the conversation off telling somebody they did something wrong, which makes them automatically put up their defenses, you're starting the conversation off identifying how you feel about something. And if it's your spouse, they obviously don't want you to feel distressed, so they're going to put those guards down and maybe want to listen a little bit more, because now they're curious. What made you feel hurt, angry, disrespected, upset? Like, let me see what's going on here. Versus if you start a conversation off with, you didn't fill up my gas tank. It's like, okay, maybe I had a reason to. So even if you are feeling, whatever about me, frustrated, irritated, they're ready to defend the fact why they didn't do it. So start off with, I feel frustrated, or I feel irritated. So I feel followed by an emotion. When, and that second blank should be filled in with a specific action. Again, say exactly what it is that you didn't like. Don't be too general in this area. Be as specific as you can. So say if you're having a conversation with someone, or you had a conversation and they didn't give you eye contact, and say if that bothered you, you felt like, hey, you disrespected me because you weren't even trying to look at me while I was talking. Then this statement will start off with, I feel ignored, or I feel disrespected, whatever the emotion is, when you look at your phone instead of giving me eye contact. When you continue to cook dinner instead of stopping and looking at me as we talk. Like, be specific as you can, so that person, you're taking the guesswork out of it. They're not trying to figure out what they did that made you feel ignored or frustrated. They know exactly what it was. So fill in that second blank with a specific behavior, so they'll know exactly what it is that they can then do differently if they choose to do something differently. The third blank, because you're telling them exactly why that's bothering you to begin with. So I'm going to stick with the bad or no eye contact example that I gave. I feel ignored when you look at your phone when I'm talking to you, because that makes me think you're not interested in what I'm saying. Or I feel ignored when you're looking at your phone while I'm talking to you because that makes me think you're not even listening. You're missing some important things I'm trying to tell you. So you're telling them exactly what it is that make you feel that way and why it makes you feel that way. Just filling in and giving more information so they can thoroughly understand with clarity what it is you're trying to say. That final blank, I would like, that is followed up with a solution. You give a solution to the problem that you identified. And when you think about it, this I statement, it isn't as long as I'm explaining it. So think about starting a conversation off with your spouse where you say, hey babe, can I talk to you for a moment? You know, the other night, I felt ignored when you were looking at your phone while I was talking because I felt like you wasn't interested in what it is I had to say. I would like for when we have conversations, look at me, give me eye contact so I can know you're listening. That way, instead of back and forth, your spouse automatically know how you feel, why you feel that way, and what they can do to make it better. So then they have the opportunity to say, oh, you know what? I didn't even know that bothered you. I was just checking for tickets for us to go to the movies the next day. But yeah, babe, no problem. I'm going to make sure, I give you eye contact or maybe let you know what it is I'm trying to do so you can tell me, all right, go ahead. You know I'm not ignoring you. Or maybe what you want to talk about is so serious to where I can still wait to do that for a few minutes. Stops all confusion. Identify how you feel, what it is that you didn't like, and what they can do to make it better using I statements. Tip number 5, ask questions. Become curious. If your partner makes that statement that I just gave an example of, feeling ignored because you were on your phone, they felt like you wasn't interested or wasn't listening, and they would like for you to look at them when you're talking, instead of becoming defensive, like, well, I was just trying to buy us some tickets for the movies. Ask questions and be like, well, babe, maybe I've done that 100 times and I never bothered you. What was it about last night? Try to become more inquisitive about what their concern is instead of automatically trying to defend your point. That helps them at least know that you're listening to them first and foremost, and also that you care. You care about solving the problem, and you're trying to not repeat the same problem over and over again in the future. Leads to tip number 6, summarize before you respond. So, if my spouse come to me and say, babe, I felt ignored talking to you the other day when you were on your phone as I was trying to talk to you because I felt like you wasn't listening to me. I'd like for you to put your phone down and look at me when I'm talking to you. Then before I automatically respond with, well, I was just trying to buy us tickets the next day, I can summarize to make sure I understood what it was he just told me. Babe, you thought I wasn't listening to you because I was looking at my phone while you were talking? That'll give him the chance to say, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Or say if I misunderstood what he said. So you saying that you didn't want me to buy the tickets? You rather had just not went to the movies at all? They can say, that don't got nothing to do with what I'm saying. I didn't even know you was buying tickets. I'm just saying I want you to look at me while I'm talking. When you summarize what it is they said to you before you respond, it gives them a chance to, again, know that you understand their true message. And if you got it wrong, that gives them a chance to correct it and say, nah, babe, this is what I'm trying to say. Or if you did get it right, it lets them know you're listening, you're with them, you got it, you got the message. And then you can give your response because they'll be more in a position to hear and listen to you. And then here's tip number 7. This is a fun activity that I recommend when I am completing marriage counseling. I often tell my couples to have what's called parking lot discussions, It can be something as simple as a poster board or maybe even a mirror in your home that you dedicate to just having some post-it notes. They can look just like this. And say if there's a subject you want to talk about, but again, maybe you guys work opposite shifts. Maybe you're always busy when you come home because you're running the household, cooking and cleaning and doing the lawn service and all these different things that can make it hard to have meaningful conversations every single day. Write down what you want to talk about on a little Post-it. Take it off and put it in the designated spot that you guys already selected. If it's a mirror, if it's a post-it board, if it's the back of your bedroom door. And what it is that you guys have already predetermined the spot and the day that you guys are going to clear the parking lot. So if by Monday, the week's getting started, things are going on, there's different things you want to talk about, but you guys already said Friday evening is when you're going to come, make time for each other, and sit down and talk about all the things you might not have had a chance to talk about during the week. That's when you go to that. I'm going to use the door for my example. That's when you close your door, you look at all those post-it notes that you guys put on the back of that door, and you take each one down and say, okay, let's talk about this. Okay, now let's talk about this. Okay, done with that one. Let's talk about the next one. That way, you're not suppressing your feelings. You're not pushing things or sweeping things under the rug. You're not forgetting to come back to conversations. Sometimes something can bother us, but we forget to mention it because we get so busy. But then it happens again and we're even more upset because we never addressed it to begin with. This is your opportunity to make sure you're addressing those things. You're saying those things you want to talk about. And all these conversations don't have to be tough conversations. It might be like, let's make time to sit down and talk about the budget. Let's make time to sit down and talk about family vacations. But that way you're guaranteed to talk about it because it's in the parking lot, and you guys clean up the parking lot every Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or whatever day it is you designated to be that day. And then I want to give you a final tip. And this is really a scripture that I want to share with you. I call it the Golden Rule scripture, and it is in Luke chapter 6, verse 31. And it simply says, "And just as you want man to do to you, you also should do to them likewise." So speak to your spouse the way you want to be spoken to by your spouse. Treat your spouse the way you want to be treated. Give the same consideration to your spouse that you're hoping that they give to you. The same compassion, the same empathy you want to receive, be willing to give that to your spouse too. Communication is not a one-way street. It's a two-way street, where you give information and you receive information. And this is how you can have effective communication within your marriage, by just following some of these tips and then remembering your attentive listening skills, your verbal, nonverbal, and paraverbal communication. Hope this video has been helpful to you. If it's helpful to you, could be helpful to someone else, feel free to share this video with whoever you like. It's all about blessing people with information to where they can continue to grow and go from glory to glory, as God calls it, to be able to be better people and to have a stronger marriage. Subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, because I do post content on a weekly basis. So if this is helpful, the next video or other videos I've already posted might be helpful to you as well. And as always, stay blessed.